When my childhood friend told me she'd emptied our business accounts, I collapsed right there on the antique shop floor. Days later, I was watching her laugh with my own lawyer behind closed doors. That's when I realized trust is like an antique vase, beautiful until someone shatters it beyond repair. If you're watching this, hit subscribe and drop a comment telling me if you've ever been betrayed by someone you loved. Because this story has more twists than a mountain road, and you'll want to buckle up for the ride. I still remember the morning everything changed. April sunlight streamed through the windows of Eleanor's antiques, catching the dust particles dancing in the air. My shop had been my salvation after my divorce 3 years ago, a small but growing business in our quaint New England town that had finally started turning a real profit. "Margaret, did you see these sales figures?" Cathleen asked, her voice bright as she breezed through the door, coffee in hand. "We're up 15% from last quarter." I smiled at her, warmth flooding my chest. Cathleen Walsh had been my best friend since 3rd grade, and when I needed a business partner to help expand the shop, she was the obvious choice. She handled the books while I sourced the merchandise, a perfect partnership, or so I thought. "The Hendersons are coming at noon to see that federal period writing desk," I said, polishing the mahogany surface one last time. "If they buy it, we'll clear enough for that vacation we talked about." Kathleen's smile faltered for just a second, but I was too busy to notice the significance. "About that," she started, but the bell above the door jingled, and Mrs. Peterson, one of our regulars, walked in. That evening, I decided to review our quarterly tax documents. Something about Kathleen's hesitation had lodged in my mind like a splinter. I wasn't an accountant, but years of managing my own finances had taught me enough. What I found made my blood turn to ice. Transfers, dozens of them, to an account I didn't recognize. Small enough to fly under the radar individually, but together they totaled over $87,000. My hands shook as I called our bank. "I need to verify some transactions," I said, my voice barely steady. "Of course, Mrs. Eleanor." Those transfers were authorized by Cathleen Walsh. She has full signatory authority on the business accounts. The room seemed to tilt sideways. "Since when?" I whispered. "Since January, ma'am. We have the paperwork right here with your signature. Script part separator ===. But I never signed any such paperwork. My signature had been forged. I spent that night pacing my kitchen floor, the cold tiles numbing my bare feet as I tried to process the betrayal. $87,000. Money that represented years of work, sacrifice, and dreams. Money that was supposed to secure my future after Gary took half of everything in the divorce. When my phone rang at 6 a.m., I answered without checking who it was. "Margaret, we need to talk." Kathleen's voice was steady, controlled. "You're damn right we do," I hissed, anger finally breaking through my shock. "I want my money back, every penny of it, by tomorrow, or I'm going to the police." "Don't be dramatic," she said with a laugh that chilled me to the bone. "Let's meet at the shop. I can explain everything." "Explain what?" "How you stole from me. How you betrayed 15 years of friendship." "Business is complicated, Maggie. You never wanted to understand the financial side." I slammed my mug down so hard coffee splashed across my counter. "Don't you dare turn this around on me." 2 hours later, I stood in my shop, watching Kathleen saunter in as if she owned the place. Maybe she thought she did. "I needed capital for an investment opportunity," she said, inspecting her manicured nails. "I was going to pay it back with interest." "You're overreacting." "Overreacting? You stole from me, Kathleen." Her face hardened. "I built this business as much as you did. You'd be nothing without me." The words struck like physical blows. "Get out," I whispered. "Get out before I call the police right now." She smiled, an expression I'd once found warm but now seemed predatory. "You won't. You can't prove anything without destroying the business in the process. Think about it, Maggie. A public scandal? The shop would never recover." That afternoon, I called my sister Ruth. "You need a lawyer," she said immediately. "I know someone, Malcolm Drake. He specializes in fraud cases." Malcolm's office was sleek and intimidating, all chrome and glass overlooking the harbor. The man himself matched his surroundings, impeccably dressed, sharp-eyed, with a handshake that meant business. "Miss Eleanor, I understand you're in a difficult situation," he said after I'd explained everything. "But Ms. Walsh is right about one thing. Going to the police immediately could damage your business." "So, she just gets away with it?" I asked, my voice breaking. "Not at all," Malcolm replied, sliding a contract across his desk. "We'll build a case methodically. Recovery, not revenge, should be your goal. Script part separator ===. I signed Malcolm's contract that afternoon, trying to ignore the knot in my stomach. $6,000 in retainer fees was steep, but what choice did I have? The next 2 weeks were the hardest of my life. I had to keep the shop running, smiling at customers while Kathleen's betrayal burned in my chest like acid. She hadn't returned since our confrontation, but her shadow lingered everywhere. "You look terrible," Ruth said bluntly when she visited. "Are you sleeping at all?" "How can I?" I snapped, then immediately regretted it.
"Sorry.
It's just, I keep going over everything wondering how I missed the signs." "Malcolm says we need documentation of everything," Ruth reminded me. "Have you been going through the records?" I nodded wearily. "Every night until my eyes blur." "I found more transfers, Ruth. It's closer to $120,000 now." The bell jingled, and we both turned. A tall man in an expensive suit stood in the doorway, surveying the shop with proprietary interest. "Can I help you?" I asked, professional smile firmly in place. "James Harrington," he said, extending his hand. "I'm looking for Kathleen Walsh." My smile froze. "She's not available." "I'm Margaret Eleanor, the owner." His eyebrows rose slightly. "Co-owner, I believe. Kathleen mentioned she was bringing me on as an investor." The floor seemed to drop from under me. "I'm sorry, what?" "We've been discussing expansion plans for Eleanor's Antiques. Or rather, what will soon be Walsh and Harrington Galleries." Ruth grabbed my arm as I swayed. "Sir," she said firmly, "I think you should leave." After he left, I called Malcolm immediately. "She's trying to sell my business to someone named Harrington."
Can she do that?
"Not legally," Malcolm assured me, "but this is concerning. I think we need to move faster than I anticipated. I'm filing for an emergency injunction today." Script part separator ===. That night, my phone rang at 11 p.m. Malcolm's name flashed on the screen. "I've got news," he said without preamble. "Kathleen didn't just take your money. She's been using it to buy property on the north side of town." "Property? What for?" "A new gallery. According to my sources, she's secured 3 storefronts already, using your money as down payments." I sank onto my couch. She was planning this all along. "There's more," Malcolm continued. "Harrington isn't just an investor. He's married to Kathleen's cousin. This is a family operation." The betrayal felt like a fresh wound. Kathleen hadn't just stolen my money. She'd been systematically planning to replace me, to build her own empire with my life's work. The next morning, I was opening the shop when a courier delivered an envelope. Inside was a notice from the building's owner. My lease payment was 30 days overdue, and I had 48 hours to pay before eviction proceedings would begin. But I paid the rent. I scrambled to find the receipt, but the file folder was empty. Kathleen had handled our rent payments for the past 6 months. I called our landlord, Mr. Peterson. "There must be some mistake."
"No mistake, Margaret.
"Haven't received a payment since February. Kathleen said you were having cash flow problems." My hands shook as I hung up. 3 months of rent, $9, $600 gone. Money I'd given Kathleen to deliver. When I called Malcolm to update him, his assistant said he was in court. "But he left a message for you. Your meeting with the bank auditor is confirmed for tomorrow at 10 a.m. I hadn't scheduled any meeting with the bank auditor. He also said to bring the original partnership agreement, she added. The partnership agreement. I rushed to the fireproof safe I kept in the shop's back office. When I opened it, the document was gone. Script part separator ===. Panic gripped me as I rifled through the safe a second time. Without that agreement, I couldn't prove my majority ownership. I called Ruth, barely able to breathe. Everything's gone. The partnership agreement, the original deed, even my backup financial records. She took them, Ruth said, her voice hard with anger. Maggie, this is criminal. We need to call the police now. But Malcolm said. Forget what Malcolm said. This is beyond a civil dispute. I hesitated, Malcolm's warnings about scandal ringing in my ears. Let me talk to him first. He's in court today, but I'll catch him tomorrow at the bank meeting. That night, I couldn't sleep. At 3 a.m., I drove to the shop and started searching every drawer, every shelf, desperate to find anything Cathleen might have missed. In the very back of a filing cabinet, I found an old thumb drive labeled Backup, 2019. My hands trembled as I plugged it into my laptop. It contained old files, nothing recent, but there was a scanned copy of our original partnership agreement. Not the original, but something. I printed 3 copies immediately. The next morning, I arrived at First National Bank 15 minutes early. The marble lobby felt cold, impersonal, a fitting place for what was becoming the fight of my life. Ms. Eleanor? A professional-looking woman approached.
I'm Vanessa Wright, forensic auditor.
Is Malcolm here yet? I asked, glancing around. She frowned. Mr. Drake? He's not scheduled for this meeting. My stomach dropped. But his office confirmed. This meeting was requested by the district attorney's office, Ms. Eleanor, based on some unusual activity flagged in your business accounts. The room seemed to spin. District attorney? Am I being investigated? Not you specifically, she said carefully. But there are concerns about possible money laundering through your business. Money laundering? I nearly shouted the words. I'm the victim here. Cathleen Walsh has been stealing from me. Ms. Wright's expression changed subtly. Perhaps you should start at the beginning. Script part separator equals. For 2 hours, I sat in a sterile conference room with Vanessa Wright, laying out the entire sordid story. She took meticulous notes, occasionally asking questions that made me realize this went deeper than I'd imagined. These property purchases, she said, pointing to a document she'd pulled up. They weren't just financed with your money. There's a pattern of deposits from offshore accounts feeding into the same transactions. What does that mean? I asked, my mouth dry. It means Ms. Walsh may be involved in something bigger than simple embezzlement. She slid a business card across the table. Detective Carlos Ramirez. He'll want to speak with you. When I left the bank, my phone showed 3 missed calls from Malcolm. I called him back immediately. Where were you? I demanded. The auditor said you weren't even supposed to be at that meeting. Margaret, calm down, he said smoothly. There was a miscommunication. Listen, I've been working on a settlement offer from Cathleen. She's willing to return 50% of the funds if you drop all claims. 50%? Of my money? That she stole? I was practically shouting in the bank parking lot. And what about the lease she didn't pay? Or the partnership agreement she took? Sometimes a partial victory is better than a protracted battle, Malcolm said.
Think about it.
I hung up, a terrible suspicion forming in my mind. Why was my own lawyer pushing me to settle for half? That evening, Detective Ramirez came to my house. A compact man with intelligent eyes and a notepad he actually wrote in, not typed on. Ms. Eleanor, we believe your case connects to a larger investigation, he said. For the past year, we've been tracking a sophisticated money laundering operation using small businesses as fronts. And you think Cathleen is part of this? I whispered. We know she is. But she's not the biggest fish. He leaned forward. How well do you know your attorney, Malcolm Drake? Script part separator equals. The question hit me like a physical blow. Malcolm? What does he have to do with this? Detective Ramirez's expression was grim. We have reason to believe Mr. Drake has connections to several businesses involved in our investigation. I remembered Malcolm's insistence that I not go to the police, his push for me to accept half my money back. My God, I whispered. They're working together, aren't they? We can't confirm that yet, but I need you to continue working with him as if nothing has changed. You want me to spy on my own lawyer? I asked incredulously. We want you to help us catch everyone involved in this scheme, Ms. Eleanor, including whoever is behind it. That night, I barely slept. My shop, my life's work, had somehow become entangled in a criminal enterprise I couldn't begin to understand. The next morning, Malcolm called. "I've set up a meeting with Cathleen for tomorrow," he said. "Just the three of us, to discuss settlement terms." I swallowed hard, trying to keep my voice steady. "Where?" "The conference room at my office. 3 o'clock. "I'll be there," I said, then immediately called Detective Ramirez.
Perfect, he said when I told him.
"We'll have surveillance in place." "Wear this." He came by an hour later with what looked like an ordinary brooch, a simple silver flower with a tiny microphone hidden in its center. The next day, I dressed carefully, a conservative navy suit that made me look professional but unthreatening. I pinned the brooch to my lapel with shaking fingers. As I entered Malcolm's sleek office building, my heart hammered so loudly I was sure everyone could hear it. The receptionist smiled blandly and directed me to the third-floor conference room. I took a deep breath outside the door, straightened my spine, and walked in. Cathleen and Malcolm were already there, heads close together in conversation. They sprang apart when I entered, but not before I saw the familiarity in their body language. "Margaret," Malcolm said smoothly, rising to greet me. "Thank you for coming. We have a very reasonable offer to discuss." Cathleen didn't stand. She simply watched me with cool appraisal, as if I were a slightly disappointing auction item. "Before we start, I have a question," I said, forcing my voice to remain steady. "How long have you two known each other?" Script part separator ===. Malcolm's smile didn't waver, but something flickered in his eyes. "Cathleen came highly recommended by a mutual associate when she needed legal advice." "A mutual associate," I repeated, taking a seat across from them. "How convenient." Cathleen leaned forward. "Margaret, this hostility isn't productive. We're here to resolve this situation like adults." "You mean like thieves and their victims?" I snapped. Malcolm opened a folder. "Let's focus on the settlement. Cathleen is prepared to return $60,000, half of the disputed amount, in exchange for your signature releasing all claims." I forced myself to breathe slowly, remembering Detective Ramirez's instructions to keep them talking. "And the lease payment she pocketed? The partnership agreement she stole?" "I didn't steal anything," Cathleen said dismissively. "I simply secured our business documents." "Our business?" I laughed bitterly. "You were planning to replace me with Harrington the whole time." Something passed between Cathleen and Malcolm, a look I might have missed if I hadn't been watching so carefully. "James Harrington is a legitimate investor," Malcolm said smoothly. "His involvement could actually benefit you if you'd reconsider this adversarial position." "Benefit me how?" Kathleen sighed dramatically. "We're offering you a dignified exit, Margaret. Take the $60,000, walk away, start something new. The alternative is messy." "Is that a threat?" Malcolm intervened. "It's a reality. Court battles are expensive, public, and rarely satisfying. This settlement is generous considering the documentation issues." "Documentation issues that exist because she stole my files," I pointed out. "Which you can't prove," Kathleen countered with a smirk. "Just like you can't prove I wasn't authorized to make those transfers." Script part separator ===. I stared at her, realization dawning. This was never about an investment opportunity, was it? "You've been planning this for months." Malcolm cleared his throat. "The settlement offer expires at the end of business today. I suggest you take it while it's available."
Who else is involved?
I asked bluntly. "Harrington, obviously. But who's really behind this? Because this isn't just about my little antique shop." The flash of alarm in Kathleen's eyes told me I'd hit a nerve. "You're being paranoid," she said, but her voice had lost its confident edge. I stood up slowly. "I'm not signing anything today. I need time to consider my options." Malcolm's professional veneer cracked slightly. "That would be unwise, Margaret. Very unwise." As I walked toward the door, Kathleen called after me.
"Don't be stupid, Maggie.
"You can't win this." I turned back. "Maybe not. But I can make sure I don't lose alone." Outside the building, Detective Ramirez was waiting in an unmarked car. I slid into the passenger seat, my legs finally giving out. "You did great," he said, handing me a bottle of water. We got exactly what we needed.
Which was what?
Confirmation of coordination between them, implied threats, and most importantly, evidence that this goes higher up. That reaction when you mentioned other people being involved, that was gold. I took a shaky sip of water. What happens now? Now we follow the money trail. Your friend Cathleen has been making large cash deposits that don't match any withdrawals from your business accounts.
Meaning?
Meaning she's getting money from somewhere else too. And based on our investigation, that somewhere else is Victor Harrington. James Harrington's father? Ramirez nodded grimly. Real estate developer with suspected ties to organized crime. We've been trying to build a case against him for years. Script part separator . I returned to my shop that evening to find the locks changed. A notice on the door stated the premises had been secured due to lease violations. My hands shook as I called Mr. Peterson again. I never violated any terms. Not according to the paperwork I received, he replied. It shows your business is being dissolved due to insolvency. That's a lie. I cried. Look, Margaret, I don't want to get in the middle of whatever's happening, but Kathleen brought documents with both your signatures. My signature, forged again. They were moving faster than I expected, trying to lock me out of my own life before I could fight back. I called Ruth in tears. They've taken the shop. They're going to strip it clean. Not if we act first, she said firmly. Meet me there in 20 minutes. Ruth arrived with her husband Frank and their pickup truck. We're getting your inventory out, she announced. But the locks. Frank held up a toolkit. I was a locksmith in college. We worked through the night, loading the most valuable pieces into the truck and Ruth's SUV. By dawn, we'd rescued nearly $200,000 worth of antiques, storing them in Ruth's garage. I fell asleep on her couch, emotionally exhausted, only to be awakened by Detective Ramirez calling. They've filed charges against you, he said, without preamble. Grand theft.
What?
I sat bolt upright. I took my own inventory. They're claiming you stole partnership property during pending litigation. Drake filed an emergency hearing for this afternoon. This was their countermove. Paint me as the thief. Force me to defend myself while they continued their scheme. What do? Get to the courthouse. I'll meet you there with a district attorney who's very interested in this case. Script part separator . The courtroom was packed, which surprised me. I'd expected a quiet hearing, not this circus. As I walked down the center aisle with Ruth at my side, I spotted Kathleen sitting confidently beside Malcolm, both dressed immaculately. Remember, stay calm, Ruth whispered as we took our seats. Judge Harriet Simmons entered, a stern-faced woman with silver hair and piercing eyes. This emergency hearing concerns Walsh versus Eleanor, allegations of theft during pending litigation. Malcolm stood immediately. Your Honor, my client Ms. Walsh has documentation proving Ms. Eleanor removed valuable inventory from their shared business premises without authorization, effectively stealing partnership assets. My heart pounded as he presented photos. Someone had been watching us that night. Miss Eleanor, do you have representation? Judge Simmons asked. Before I could answer, the courtroom doors opened. A tall woman in a crisp suit strode in, followed by Detective Ramirez. Alexandra Winters, District Attorney's Office, she announced. Your Honor, we're intervening in this matter as it connects to an ongoing criminal investigation. Kathleen's face drained of color. What investigation? Judge Simmons asked sharply. Money laundering and racketeering, Alexandra replied. We have evidence that Ms. Walsh and Mr. Drake are involved in a criminal enterprise using Ms. Eleanor's business as a front. Malcolm stood. This is preposterous. Your Honor. Sit down, Mr. Drake, Judge Simmons ordered. Ms. Winters approached the bench. They spoke in hushed tones while Kathleen glared at me with pure hatred. I'd never seen such venom in her eyes. When Alexandra returned to her place, she looked satisfied. This hearing is suspended, Judge Simmons announced. Mr. Drake and Ms. Walsh are to surrender their passports immediately. Ms. Eleanor, you are granted temporary sole control of all business assets pending resolution of these matters. Script part separator . The courtroom erupted into chaos. Malcolm was on his feet, shouting objections while Kathleen grabbed her designer purse and made for the door, only to find two officers blocking her exit. "This isn't over," she hissed as they escorted her back to her seat. I sat in stunned silence, unable to process the sudden reversal of fortune. Just hours ago, I'd been the accused. Now I watched as the DA's office dismantled my opponents piece by piece. The court is also freezing all assets connected to Walsh, Drake, and the Harrington family pending further investigation. Judge Simmons continued, her voice cutting through the commotion. Outside the courtroom, Alexandra pulled me aside. "We've been building this case for months. Your situation gave us the opening we needed. What happens now?" I asked, still dazed. "We've traced over $2 million moving through your shop's accounts, money that never touched your legitimate business. Kathleen was the perfect front, your trusted partner with clean access to banking systems. Detective Ramirez joined us. Victor Harrington needed businesses to wash money from his real estate developments. Your antique shop, with its cash transactions and valuable items, was perfect." "And Malcolm?" I asked. "The legal brain behind it all," Alexander confirmed. "He's represented 6 other businesses we've linked to this operation." I leaned against the wall, my legs weak. I still can't believe Kathleen would do this. 15 years of friendship. "Money changes people," Ramirez said simply. "But it's not over. We need your help to make these charges stick. Script part separator ===. I studied them both. What do you need me to do?" 2 weeks later, I sat in a surveillance van outside an upscale restaurant in Boston. I wore an elegant black dress and the same brooch microphone, my hands trembling as Alexandra adjusted it. "Remember, we need Victor Harrington to implicate himself. Keep him talking about the gallery properties." I nodded, feeling sick with nerves. Malcolm had arranged this meeting, believing I was finally ready to be reasonable and accept their terms. Inside, Kathleen and Malcolm were already seated with James Harrington and an older man I recognized from news photos. Victor Harrington, the real estate tycoon with the immaculate reputation and, apparently, dirty money. "Margaret," Malcolm greeted me with false warmth. "Thank you for joining us. You know James, and this is his father, Victor." Victor Harrington studied me with cold calculation. "So you're the troublesome antique dealer." I forced a smile. "I prefer determined business owner." "Well, determination only gets you so far," he replied. "Sometimes wisdom means knowing when to step aside." Kathleen leaned forward. "We've revised our offer, Maggie. 100,000 and a small stake in the new gallery if you drop everything and sign over the business tonight." I pretended to consider it. "The gallery you're building with my money on North Street?" Something flickered across James's face. "You know about the North Street properties?" "I know more than you think," I said carefully. "I know about the offshore accounts, the cash that moved through my shop, the other businesses." Victor's expression hardened. "Miss Eleanor, whatever you think you know." I cut him off. "I know enough to understand I'm sitting with the architects of a money laundering scheme that used my business as a washing machine. The question is, what's my silence worth?" A dangerous smile spread across Victor's face. Now we're speaking the same language. For the next 30 minutes, Victor Harrington laid out exactly how their operation worked, believing he was negotiating my complicity rather than securing his conviction. As he detailed the scheme that had nearly destroyed me, I felt a strange calm replace my fear. They had underestimated me for the last time. When I finally left the restaurant, my hands were shaking but my spine was steel. The moment I stepped into the surveillance van, Alexandra and Detective Ramirez were grinning. "We got them," Alexandra said, removing her headphones. Every word, crystal clear. 3 days later, I watched from the back of a crowded courtroom as Kathleen, Malcolm, and both Harringtons were arraigned on multiple felony charges. The evidence was overwhelming, not just my recordings, but financial records from 6 other businesses they'd used in their scheme. Kathleen didn't look at me once. Her designer outfit had been replaced by a drab pantsuit, her confident posture now slumped in defeat. As I walked out of the courthouse into the bright spring sunshine, Ruth squeezed my hand. "It's over, Maggie. You won." But victory felt hollow somehow. I'd lost a friendship I'd valued for most of my life, discovered depths of betrayal I never imagined possible. My shop stood empty, the closed sign still hanging in the window. 6 months later, I unlocked the doors of Eleanor's Antiques once more. The DA's office had recovered most of my money, plus damages. Mr. Peterson had apologized profusely and offered a new 5-year lease at reduced rates. As I arranged a queen and tea table in the front window, the bell above the door jingled. "We're not open yet," I called without turning. "I'm not here to shop," a familiar voice replied. I turned to find Detective Ramirez, Carlos, holding a small package. "Thought you might want this back," he said, handing me the silver flower brooch. "Seems only right it should return to the woman brave enough to wear it." As he helped me finish setting up the shop that afternoon, I realized that trust, once broken, can never be fully restored. But sometimes, in the fragments, you find something new and unexpectedly beautiful. The antiques around me were proof enough of that.